announcement that will be happening throughout the building, and that is going to be also announced in this chamber. We've asked for the speakers to be switched on, so we will then be aware that that will be happening. Now, following that, we will then do the first sort of standing items of the agenda, which will be items 1 to 5, running through to the standing item on the scrutiny. At that point, we will then be adjourning the meeting because we have a delegation coming in from the Suffolk New Academy. There are going to be 10 or 11 15-year-olds who are going to be coming in. If we can, we might try and get them in earlier. We're just trying to track them down, really. But they will be coming in. We're going to spend a few minutes with them in the councillors' area so that they can see how councillors operate.
Attention, please. We will shortly announce the start of voluntary 2-minute silence to commemorate Remembrance Day. The 2 minutes will begin at 11 a.m. We will let you know when the 2 minutes is passed. Thank you.
You have been warned. Okay, we're tracking young people down. They're going to now be joining us for the 2 minute silence, which I think is very appropriate. Can I ask Mr. Redson if you can switch off your camera, and there will be no filming during the 2 minute silence, and then please then do feel free to film once we go into the meeting, which will be following that. We will then reconvene after the adjournment at 11:45 a.m. and then the meeting will then run through in the order as we have in the agenda here, with the exception of item number 9, which is the further agency agreement for civil parking enforcement. That paper has now been withdrawn, and the intention is that we'll come back at our next meeting on the 9th of December. So paper 9 has been withdrawn, but all the other items will run through from item 6 beginning at 11:45. Thank you very much indeed. Page 4, no fire alarms allowed sanitary plan today, so we'll go to the real following what we find on page 4. You're aware that there is filming going on today, and if anyone in the public has objection to this, then please do need to let us know. The intention is that nobody will to ask you first of all if there are any apologies for absence. I'm not aware of any. I think everybody is here with the exception of Councillor Newman, who will be joining us later. He has civic responsibilities in Felixstowe. Are there any declarations of interest and dispensations that anyone would like to make us aware of from Mersea Cabinet? No. Thank you very much indeed. The minutes of the previous meeting held on the 14th of October. Can I ask Cabinet if you're happy to accept them? There is one amendment that I do ask you to note, and that is that where it says also present, Tony Brown and wasn't present, so therefore wasn't part of the meeting, so that needs to be removed. Other than that, are you happy that these are signed as a true and accurate record of what we discussed? All agreed? Thank you very much indeed. Item number 4, public questions. I'm not aware that there are any public questions. In which case then we move on to item number 5, which is a standing item, it's the update of the scrutiny check. As always, we have a written report. I assume that members have the opportunity to read that report. But are there any additional comments, Councillor Lynch, you'd like to make before we take questions?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think it's very straightforward. You'll note that we've had a Water and Education Committee in this period. The House Scrutiny Committee clearly did meet. Their first meeting, as you can see, did actually review the close integration of the care services in the county, and the recommendations or the noted comments from that are listed there. I think it's important that you note that item A does actually note the bid for funding in order to, as a critical factor to underpin this work. And actually for the request for the 3 CCGs to provide innovative examples to come back to the next meeting to actually follow the progress of this. The item 7 on that agenda was actually included in that meeting at relatively short notice, but I thought it was important to do that. In summary, I suppose it felt that it wasn't satisfied that all lessons had been learned, although it's very fair to say that County Council acted very swiftly in terms of what they had to do once they knew what was going on. But they have requested, as on item B, to their meeting on the 20th of January, a number of answers to questions which are clearly listed there. Moving on to the Suffolk Flood Risk Joint Scrutiny Subcommittee, the only comment I'd like to say is that there is now a chairman, namely Councillor Gregor. And in terms of the scrutiny committee itself, the key item which was reviewed was our place in model. It's very clear that our place is very much a process which is not one size fits all. It actually makes it quite difficult to implement, and that was debated quite clearly. The committee felt it was important to identify and communicate an example of good practice. I think there are some good things going on, but we tend to keep them under a barrel, or bush under the bush, or barrel under the bush, I'm sorry, under a bush. Under a bush. Thank you. An important issue was noted, though, on the basis that one side doesn't fit all, that consideration in particular should be given to how to develop the process or the model required for the model of Ipswich and Lowestoft, in view of the different structures in place in those 2 towns in urban areas, unlike the parish structure. In some cases, the role of the county councillor versus the role of the place officer, I think we need clarification, and a debate was held on that. So that all concerned, including local communities, can understand the process of how that's going. There are some good examples, and I think we need to make ideas. Finally, Mr. Chairman, the selection of our place officers, and it was recognised that the role they've been asked to do is very much additional to their professional role, and therefore, in essence, they won't get paid extra to do it. The role of those officers, although the selection of those officers should be removed because it's not an easy job. With the fundamental aim of trying to ensure that there is consistent effort made to support that marketplace initiative across the whole site. There's no doubt, in terms of what is happening, it's certainly been more successful in some areas than others, and it's not only due to the RPS officers, it's actually due to a number of factors. So in fact, the activity, the availability of RPS officers was identified as an area which was worthy of improvement. I think there are some key areas of that highlights.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Finch. Now we'll open it up for any questions or comments, first of all, from members of Cabinet, before I open it up to other members of Council. Councillor Murray first, please.
Yes, thank you. I was present all day at the Prosecutor meeting and listened to their requests and certainly taken the recommendations on very solidly and will look forward to information for their next meeting.
Any other questions from yes, Councillor Hoffman?
Thank you. Obviously, I was at the scrutiny committee on the October place. I think we did a very good, useful discussion, and I think everyone can take away the comments that were made, the recommendations, and certainly something we're going to be looking into in the future. So I think we thank the scrutiny committee for an opportunity to time to review the place.
Any other questions from Cabinet before I throw it over for other members? No? Okay. Councillor McGregor was first, and then Councillor Martin.
Yes, thank you. Yes, thank you. This is Councillor McGregor speaking, not Biggs. On page,
I think we know that. Sorry, go on, Councillor McGregor.
on page 1C, I see you asking the CECGs to give a good practice. Could I at the same time ask, in fact, that an explanation be given as to the lack of utilisation of Harlesmere Hospital, which is a community hospital, which was renovated at considerable capital expense. It seems to be something out of Westminster with plenty of staff, plenty of secretaries, but very little patients taking place in there. And I think this is something which really ought to be taken into account because the High Suffolk is the centre of everywhere. And it's a long way to go to a place like Bury, Norwich and Ipswich for hospital appointments. It's much better if Harlesmere Hospital was better used. Thank you, Jim.
I think, in general terms, the current healthcare review that's ongoing is looking at the better use of hubs throughout Suffolk. Obviously, we're constrained by funding, but in terms of Hartismere, we already have almost state-of-the-art buildings, so I would agree wholeheartedly that I will have to do my share of the work to try and get more work done at Hartismere.
Councillor Martin.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'm unfortunately unable to attend the Outness scrutiny meeting. I had been at the previous scrutiny meeting, at which, of course, there was some disagreement from at least one councillor about the way the scrutiny went. And one of the things that came out of that was the desire to see the recommendations of the Cabinet before the Cabinet said that he had the scrutiny meeting, which he got the letters on last year. I was really pleased to see the recommendations that come forward, that we've got those recommendations that has been there. And not only that, but one recommendation was a suggestion or amendment was made by one of our councillors there, and that was taken on board, and it's in the things that come forward. So clearly, a constitutional vote for us, we do need to look at every word at the arrangements, but I must say, I think that this is certainly going to reduce the contribution to
Thank you very much. Now, Councillor Martin. And I think we have a date fixed for that constitutional party, and I think that is on the agenda. Yes, Councillor.
Can I just respond to Councillor McGregor's comment? I just want to pass that back to
Any questions? Any other questions you would like to raise? Okay. If not, then I look to Cabinet to ask if you want agree? Thank you very much indeed. Now, we're waiting for our young people to arrive. I think the plan is that they're going to come and join us here. So what I'm going to do now is to ask the Cabinet if they are happy that we adjourn the meeting. I need to have your agreement on this. I'm going to move from the chair that we adjourn the meeting until 11:45 a.m. So for the next roughly 40 minutes, and then we'll take up the business of the meeting. Just been informed by members of the technology, the children are running 5 minutes late, and that's not just me doing that. And as soon as they rise, I'll be brought into the chamber and be an opportunity for members to meet them. So if you'd like to keep your seats, we will adjourn the meeting now. I ask Cabinet, are you happy that we adjourn the meeting? Are you agreed? Agreed. Thank you very much indeed. This meeting stands adjourned. Ipswich Northern Fringe hybrid planning application, land of Westfield Road, and we're asking if Councillor Newman was now able to join the meeting. If you're happy to take us through this report, and then we'll open up the questions and comments as usual.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, as the leader has just said, this is a hybrid application as part of the Northern Fringe. In the end, will total 3,200 homes. This application is about 815 homes in outline, of which 80 is for full planning permission. A further 735 will be confirmed through reserve matters. The development also includes supermarket, a primary school, open space, and community facilities. Just to correct the introduction on the report, actually it's down west of Westerfield Road in Ipswich, not Westerfield Road. Suffolk County Council, in its role as statutory consultee to Ipswich Borough Council as the local planning authority, needs to confirm its position on the application. Given the scale of this application and its potential impact throughout Ipswich and impact on county council services, I think it's appropriate that this particular one is taken here at Cabinet. Our office has been working very closely with Ipswich Borough Council and the assistance of the government's advisory team for large applications, known as ATLAS, the developments and landowners. Even though there's a previous application on this site, Borough Council set out supplementary guidance and engagement, there are still many questions that remain unanswered. And probably in terms of my portfolio, transport issues, road and pedestrian bridges are indeed a major concern. That the reliability of the traffic modelling, extent and the effect of the mitigation measures proposed. The report summarises the conclusions reached by Suffolk's traffic experts, WSP and ACOM in this instance. The applicant's own model highlights some routes will experience increase in delay of more than 30 minutes when the full Northern Fringe development is completed in 2027. This is a severe impact, and clearly the applicant needs to demonstrate how this is going to be avoided by supporting more people to walk, cycle, and people to use public transport to get around. This authority has been consistently clear on the need for bridges to provide connections, and the traffic from the Northern Fringe needs to be managed before it gets into the wider network through signalised junctions. Now, I realise that's not what lots of people want, but given the current state of the Ipswich Road network and its propensity for an expansion, that is really going to be the only way we can actually handle this sort of traffic impact. Pedestrian bridge following the Fonorow Way is a very important element, not just for encouraging people in development to access the surrounding countryside, which is important for health and well-being, but the bridge allows access to Country Park, which would provide an alternative destination for the people of Ipswich and other areas where wildlife is sensitive to disturbance. A major issue that we have over the applications that stand is also in the education area, and Chambers is going to comment on that. There needs to be much clearer parameters about how and when the secondary school will be delivered. And
I personally have, having been a previous cabinet member for education, very concerned about children's independence and being able to get to school under their own steam. Any question of going off this estate to any of the nearby secondary schools would clearly be a very severe impediment to them being able to do that without reliance on at least public transport and at worst the private car, which had implications all of its own. We need certainty about this proposal, given that all that's going on in the education fund and its capital funding to be able to support this application. Chairman, do you want to bring in Councillor Chambers at this point, because this is quite an important part of the presentation.
Councillor Chambers, you've been well trained, trailed there.
Absolutely. Thank you, Councillor Newman. I think what we need to ensure is that we have a clear plan for future provision of education. Not just when primary school is actually mentioned in that application, but we need to ensure that we've got a very clear plan in terms of early years right through to sixth form provision. And while we've worked very closely with our Ipswich Borough Council officers on their local plan and their supplementary planning documents, this application really does not provide what we actually need. We need to make sure we get this right from the outset, and that everything is laid down clearly within an overriding plan for all phases of this northern fringe. The application does actually describe the provision for a primary school, as I've already said, but it doesn't provide the necessary detail on early years, although the primary school site would have sufficient capacity to have early years within the 5-acre site detailed. What we do need is we need the detail that backs that up to make sure that we can deliver what is required. A major concern, and Councillor Newman has already alluded to this, is around the secondary school, and we need to make sure that we can deliver a secondary school for that whole area. It needs to be a shared plan between all parties, and that needs to be done from the absolute outset, and not something that's tagged on at a later date. We need to make sure that landowners, developers, Ipswich Borough Council and the County Council will have a very clear vision of how this is going to be delivered. We need to agree from the beginning the cost of the land. We need to agree about the buildings and ensure that the phasing is clearly laid out. As Councillor Newman has said, that capital funding is an issue for this authority, and I think we have said that in this room before. We have seen a reduction in our government capital funding for basic need, and we need to ensure that we can provide sufficient through not only funding that we put forward as a local authority, but also that is delivered via the Section 106 agreement. So you can see that by this small area coming forward, it is not sufficient to have the overarching vision that we need for the whole of the northern fringe, and to make sure that everybody signs up to that shared vision and agreement that we so desperately need to get in place. So I'm absolutely 100% supportive of the paper that we have here today. We've got a long way to go before we're satisfied that we can provide what is actually needed for this growing community.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor James. Councillor Newman?
Just come back again, a third area of concern that we have about this proposal is that around sustainable urban drainage, where we end up getting in terms of national recommendations. You'll see on the plan on page 33 of the paper, there's an area to the northwest of the site which is already in a flood zone. Not sufficient information in this application to address issues ultimately which may well affect other parts of the estate, which we need to have that clarified. The technical point that Councillor Chambers has made there, in terms of roads and infrastructure, there is no other funding available either on or off the site for mitigatory work, other than that which we can yield through Section 106 agreements at this stage. So we've got to get this right now in order to make sure that the provision across the entire develop 3,200 houses over the next 20 years ends up doing the things we need it to do and actually fosters the use of other transport means other than the private car. It is part of a wider development, the principle which is established through Ipswich Garden Suburb plan, but our strategies and plans for transport and education incorporate Northern Fringe would need to be radically amended in this particular development does not support the delivery of the items which we've discussed in some length.
Very much indeed. No comments from Cabinet. First, Councillor Murray.
Thank you, Chairman. I need to make it clear, as Ipswich Councillor, I'm very much for development of Ipswich. We need it from a housing point of view, from the economic point of view, so very much in favour of that. But this is a very big development, as eventually. But there are, on this particular site, very difficult constraints geographically. The railway to the north, this current development, an important arterial road to the south. You have to look at the map on page 34 of your papers to see what the constraints are. We need to work out all the infrastructure for the site now. If we don't get the infrastructure in place as the site develops, we risk doing it in a piecemeal fashion and ending up with no decent infrastructure to support development whatsoever. As Councillor said, 30-minute or more traffic jams getting in and out of the site. There are no further plans for pedestrianisation, bus movement into the centre of Ipswich, provision of bus lanes and prioritisation needs adequate work to support this. Let alone what we do with sewerage, which I gather at the moment is adequate for this part of the development, but almost only inadequate for the whole development, which may involve ripping up most of North East Ipswich to re-pipe down to the docks. We need all these items to be discussed in full now. Thank you very much.
Any other comments from members of Cabinet before I open up to other members of Cabinet? Yes, Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Chair. I really just want to support the views of Councillor Chambers, especially with regard to the early years provision. The planning authority has the opportunity to plan the Northern Fringe development as a whole and to ensure the inevitable transport issues are properly addressed, as are all education requirements from early years to the high school, with all developers contributing their fair share of the capital contribution over the whole of the Northern Fringe project. I do not believe that the hybrid application does this, and so I will be supporting the recommendation.
Thank you very much indeed. Are there any other comments from Cabinet? If not, I will open it up to other members of the Council President. Councillor Wood was first, please, then Councillor Murray.
Yes, many thanks. I'm really speaking on behalf of England, Ingrid Robinson, who's the local member. Unfortunately, she can't be here today. She's in the house for our Mr. Station. So, and I know she's had a lot of conversations over this with the officers and with local residents. And some of the concerns she's got, and they've been asked by local residents, are basically, it would appear that monitoring of air pollution within this area is no longer being monitored. Surely this should be undertaken due to the cumulative effects of Great Lakeland, Heathrow Incinerator, crematorium, because I believe in that area there's a vulnerable situation or something, so it does suffer with effects from that. So I would thought that should be looked at. And also, it was brought to my attention, I know she was concerned with it, as are the residents, that a local minister, the transport minister, visited that area recently, and he stated that it seemed very clear that the Westfield Road was a country road, as were the lanes and that within the area, we would not be able to cope with the number of vehicles from this massive new housing estate. And they're particularly concerned about connecting roads. And it would appear that we ourselves, the county council, have not undertaken any surveys within that area for the last few years. In fact, some of the lanes have never been surveyed. So I would think as part of it, we should undertake surveys so that we've got valuable information and that. And I know she was very concerned that this application was very recent, but I think, and I know she's pleased to see the recommendations you've come up with. But I think it's very important to keep, if the recommendations are accepted, to keep local councils in the loop as well as the adjoining councils to this, because I know Councillor Field, he's perhaps adjoined it, and of course that's the country areas into play. So I think it's extremely important that the whole loop is maintained throughout times, so you can take this forward without important questions being asked at the last minute. But they're the two main concerns. Thank you very much.
Councillor Belford, next.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Some 18 months or so ago, I stood up in one of your cabinet meetings and said that this proposal, this planning application in various stages, was totally and utterly unacceptable and recommended to you that you refuse it. I am therefore delighted that the recommendation in front of you today is to refuse this planning application. The infrastructure in total, but I'm particularly worried about the highways, is utterly inadequate. I would suggest this is a totally unsuitable site because we cannot improve the highway situation in its degree. It's a totally unsuitable site for any major housing development in Ipswich. There are numerous sites in Ipswich where development can take place, but this is the easy option. And I think we must refuse it all the way through. I cannot see how they can come up with anything adequate. I will also particularly refer to the constituents I have adjoining the site, namely Westfield and the other villages nearby as well. There is absolutely no provision for alleviating traffic problems that they already have in Westfield. It's going to be compounded dramatically by this development. And we've got to continue to refuse this development until moves are undertaken to alleviate the major problem for these rural areas of Westfield and further out still. Because if you put that number of houses on these in that area, they are going to use the roads to get out of Ipswich, which is going to cause even more problems. So I beg you, if at all possible, to refuse this building on this site of any significance at all, forever. And but certainly we must refuse it until there is vastly improved highway structure and obviously the other infrastructure requirements which are necessary.
Thank you very much indeed. I've got Councillor Otton next, and then Councillor Knight.
I think I'm wrong. In fact, there were mitigation measures in the previous
Sorry, Councillor, can you bring my first slide in there?
There were actually mitigation measures within the previous application. So it is most confusing is why this application would not actually include those mitigation measures anyway. The other question is, I believe I'm right that Ipswich Hospital does have no travel plan, and therefore I know from experience recently that the amount of traffic in that direction and that location to and from Hospital at peak time is, well, I mean at peak time it's virtually a standstill, I would say. So I think you're quite right in that there are still a considerable amount of work to be done in order to absolutely, if this application goes ahead in any form at all, that some of these measures have got to be stringently in place. I'd also like to ask that obviously the funding that you have in here, particularly for schools, is via the Suffolk section 106. However, of course, the government has now brought in the proposal for community infrastructure levy, which in some respects actually changes a lot of that funding regime and the charges therein. So will that put in danger any of the commitments for the funding of particularly the schools and the infrastructure? We're also extremely concerned, I think that Malcolm Murray touched on, is the lack of any plans for public transport, cycling, etc., etc. So I have to say, I congratulate the recommendation, which is so strong to say we must object and to at least some of these mitigation measures are put in place.
Thank you very much indeed. I've got Councillor Manford next and then Councillor Gray.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. It's becoming apparent that this application may be declined today, and if that's so, it would appear that the traffic issues could be one of the main reasons why my refusal is given to that one. It's been pointed out that we have the East Suffolk railway line running alongside this development, and on that line is actually Westerfield Station, right adjacent to the proposed development. Now, as someone who lives on the northern fringes, not of Ipswich, but of the county, I use that line to travel between Ipswich and Lowestoft fairly regularly. And one of the things that's always puzzled me, there are about 17, I think, trains in either direction on a normal weekday, and of those 17 trains, only 3 of them stop in Westerfield. Sorry, all of them, virtually all of them stop in Westerfield, but only 3 of them do the activated doors to allow people to embark and disembark there. And it seems very strange to me, it has to stop there because of the timing of railway stations and the signals. Apparently it's something to do with the charging between the franchise owner and rail track. Could that be contributing towards not just the increases that we might see from this, and is it something that could be addressed?
Well, he'll come in a minute. I'm not sure if there's anyone to ask, but Councillor New will certainly have an answer to it. I'm going to ask Councillor McGregor, who may also have an answer to it as well. We're going to ask him to ask his question.
Well, yes, as the person persuades Suffolk County Council support the early service of the Suffolk line. The reasons here effectively is the slowness of the line, which makes it very difficult to make the connection at each end. One of the decisions which a failure made was to drop the Westfield station. In fact, I'm surprised you say it stops and doesn't let people off, but in reality it's only time to stop very infrequently. And indeed, if the line is speeded up, that can be resolved. Anyway, coming back to the main function, I think what is surprising and confusing is, first of all, let's make it clear, the decision on this planning application is in the hands of Ipswich Borough Council. They will make their decision. We're only consultees, they're statutory consultees. Having said that, I'm surprised the application has indeed come forward, because it is contrary to the published documentation of Suffolk County Council, which I brought forward for you some years ago. Can I just remind you, in terms of the strategy for Ipswich, which basically promote choice, facilitate sustainable growth, development and regeneration, promote better health, and improve integration, accessibility and connectivity. Also part of this is to encourage modal shift from the car and use public transport to cycling and walking. Improve the provision of bus and train services, and all the rest of it. Improve destination and cycle routes within the town and tackle congestion, and also facilitate movements to the town centre. Now that is the published documentation which has been adopted by the County Council, and I assume also adopted by the Borough Council. So as I say, this is a no-brainer. I'm surprised the applicant brought it forward because it's contrary to the published documentation and policies of the County Council as the Street Planning Authority. Indeed, the issues of congestion in terms of Ipswich are very real, which is why, of course, we brought forward the 21 million scheme to improve the situation in the centre of Ipswich. So for all these reasons, I do urge the Cabinet to support this particular recommendation, to raise objections, and urge the Borough Council to reject the planning application. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Councillor Gray. If there are no other questions or comments, I'm going to ask the Cabinet member to respond.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, I mean, one or two people have mentioned the railway situation, and actually it's not clear in this document, and wouldn't need to be clear in this document, but Network Rail also have major proposals for Westerfield Station. There is a proposal on the table to actually move the station to the western side of Westerfield Road from its current eastern side, and in order to straighten out the junction with the Felixstowe branch because of the projected volume of container trains that are travelling that route and are limited to, I think, 15 or 20 miles an hour as they take a very steep curve round towards Tubman Road. So that is something else which I think really want to ask officers to work in to their continued negotiations with Ipswich Borough Council and indeed the developer. And just to pick up on Councillor McGregor's point, it is inexplicable to us just why this proposal has been brought forward at this stage with so many unresolved issues, given the very things that he laid down 18 months ago in terms of the Ipswich local plan and the supplementary planning guidance, which covers all this stuff and actually postulates a more sustainable traffic model, which has been completely ignored in this. So it's very worrying that that's happened. In terms of air quality, as mentioned by Councillor, that is a Borough Council decision. It's touched on in the paper at paragraph 62, on page 25. I think that would be an issue which would need to be continually monitored as this development grows. And keeping the pledge that obviously trying to get councillors involved. But as has been said, this is an Ipswich Borough Council decision. We are merely consultees in this, albeit statutory consultees. To also address Councillor Belfield's problem, yes, of course, I'm very concerned about what's going to happen on West of Road, but I think you have to take the fact that we are here now with this application on the table to give our views upon. A lot of what has gone before has been framed by this authority's previous decision in favour of development in that area, which generally has contributed our previous contributions that I was just mentioning to the Ipswich local plan and supplementary planning guidance. On paragraphs 41 to 43, there is mention there of longer term issues to try and address some of the problems, which things being identified really, in Church Lane in Westerfield, and indeed a variety of other places that will be affected by northern fringe traffic. And that's something which we're also working on, and not very much work at this stage. So I'll probably leave something on Councillor Melford. I think that answers the issues, Chairman, but I think we are pretty well united across the chamber here that this needs to be rejected in its current form. We look forward to much more detailed proposals to come forward on highways, sustainable transport activity, education, drainage, and I think also has been mentioned by Councillor Murray, sewage as well. So a whole plethora of issues which are not clear at all in this development.
Go on, Councillor.
Could you just answer my question around funding changes via the community infrastructure levy, whether that would affect the funding?
Well, I mean, again, we've had some preliminary thoughts about the community infrastructure levy, and I think there are issues about what you can exact from community infrastructure levy, and actually all the things which we are needing to cover. And I touched that in my introduction to this paper. It's roads and transport, both on and off the site. It's education, all the provisions that we've talked about here. There is the question of whether you can actually exact that much money out of community infrastructure levy as it's currently structured. So therefore we're looking for section 106 in respect of particular developments in particular locations to supplement the money that we need to make the appropriate infrastructure development.
Thank you very much. We'll move to the decision then. You have the recommendations on page 15, recommendations 1 and 2. Can I ask Cabinet if you're happy to support the recommendations? Are we agreed? That is unanimous. Thank you very much indeed. We move on. Item number 7 is the quarterly budget monitoring for revenue and capital. And I'll ask Councillor Anton to take through.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm very pleased to present to Cabinet the budgetary monitoring report for the current year based on information as at the end of September 2014. Colleagues will note that the anticipated overspend on the revenue budget is lower by around £2 million than that forecast at the 4-month stage, which means that we're moving in the right direction. The overspend split almost entirely between ACS and CYP, and these are offset to some degree by small underspends in all other areas, no much in all other areas, and some other areas. There are signs in both of those directorates that the underlying causes of overspend are being addressed, and I prefer colleagues to the relevant cabinet members to flesh out in detail about that. You should note also that the capital expenditure programme of 93.4 million has been revised to take into account carry forwards from last year plus additional funding received in quarters 1 and 2. I think that's all I'll say at the moment.
Okay, we'll take questions. Susan, there are members of the Cabinet questions, in which case we'll open it up for other members of the Council, and then you can respond to other questions from them. Any questions from other members of the Council? Councillor Smith first.
Chairman, thank you. I have two questions. First of all, on table 4, on page 60, we are shown there that highways and transport have a forecast budget at 23.6 million with no variance. Now, let me be fairly careful if I say that the contract with PRNG has not proved ideal. And I understand there are likely to be financial overspend on that. So could that please be explained to me why at the moment there's no provision in kind for any overspend on that? My second question is on paragraph 43 on page 68, where quite correctly it's been pointed out that the waste transfer station in Greater Leamington has been delayed. Not through our choice, not through the Council's choice, I quite understand that, because of judicial review and an undertaking that we've given to St Edmundsbury Borough Council to look further at possible other sites. Now, I'm quite content with that, but it does have financial implications both in this year and definitely next year as well. Could it be explained what they are, please?
Thank you very much indeed. I think we'll deal first of all with the transport one, and I think just ask if that can be said in the public meeting, obviously about commercial issues, and answer to the first question.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, of course, this is the situation as we forecasted at the end of the year, as seen at the end of the second quarter. So, if we have issues involved in the present state of highways maintenance activity, I just need to say that those figures include staff costs and revenue works activities for cyclic works such as grass cutting, reactive repairs, lighting maintenance and energy, winter gritting, etc. It does not relate to the significant elements of the backlog of small-scale planned work which has unfortunately built up over these past few months. Therefore, subject to comments in paragraph 23 about minor variances, a balanced outturn is still forecast at the year end. And it should be borne in mind, I think, that actually the arrangements that we have with the contractor are remarkably transactional. So therefore we know at any one time what we've committed with the contractor and what we haven't. And that is what we're talking about here, say regarding the actual budget spend at the end of the year. We're not really so much talking about what actual outcome is producing on the roads. And as I said, at any year at quarter 2, the winter is yet to come, which could have a significant effect on revenue costs in terms of sorting, snow clearance operations and indeed defect repairs. But at this stage, balanced revenue outturn is our best estimate.
I think Councillor Hart spoke about your position to update us on the... Yeah.
Could I just add this?
Please do.
As far as the winter outcome is concerned, as far as the winter outcome is concerned, there is also a reserve which will be pulled down in the event of significant spending as a result of the bad winter, and that obviously would make up the difference in the budget.
Okay, are you, if you're not ready yet, Councillor Murray is waving his pen around. You want to come in? Yep.
Just to say, I want to take this opportunity to congratulate our very precious frontline staff who are doing amazing job and managing circumstances and all the officers supporting them. We've got very many balls in the air recently. Reorganising, reconditioning home care, home first, care homes, learning disability spend, care act next year, still many discussions of care act 2012. SCCs, housing related support, working in the voluntary sector. What I can say is gratifyingly, our care purchasing overspend, is at the lowest for the last 5 years. Our Supporting Lives Connecting Communities programme is showing, dare I say, very small green shoots. I hope that will continue. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Councillor Spoke, I'm pleased to call in Bryn if you want more detail, more detail, but if you'd like to kick off with an answer.
Thank you. Councillor is completely right. The delay has been over the judicial review and over activity side. And any capital which wasn't spent will obviously be carried forward to the financial year. We don't actually know the final implications, financial implications. We're currently working on, as you say, a joint proposal with the Ipswich Garden Council over a possible alternative site. It's likely that that business case will be completed by January, so we'll have some different figures on whether that's the best way forward with regard to the taxpayer and value for money.
Can I come back quickly, John? Can I come back very quickly? Thank you very much for that answer. It wasn't quite my question. My question was the effect on the revenue budget for this year and next year, because there were savings to be made with that waste transfer station to be in place, where waste is locked up and taken to Great Lake. Now, I understand the exact figures may not be available, but I'm wondering if either I could have those at a later date, or they could be included in the next quarterly report, please.
I think we can certainly do that, Councillor Smith. And as you know, you were part of the discussion at the time, we realised that there were going to be problems with the judicial review and delay on that. We've been quite transparent about that, but we can give you the detailed figures and those can be available. Thank you. Councillor Commissioner, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to ask the Cabinet member perhaps to expand on one of the areas on the capital program for economic skills and environment. Obviously, a big chunk of that is the waste program, but it represents about half of it, the others. Clearly, my understanding is that it's due delay, and one of the last questions is what do we do about it? We then do it. Sorry, I don't mind doing it.
Go on, Councillor Harper first.
I think it was answered in the previous comment with regards to the capital spend. As I said, we're working on alternative proposals, and we're making sure that any unspent obviously will be carried forward and spent. So
other than the waste project. Other than the waste project, in other words, you've got the 13.8 million identified as pay. It's the balance of that to the 25. Well, 25 million pounds worth of savings as a variance on table 10. Of that, 13.8 million is the waste project. Is that right?
Bryn, I think there's a ball rolling your way, so will you please help us out with these detailed questions?
Well, that's what I'm asking. What are we doing?
But of course, some of that figure is nothing to do with waste orders.
Exactly.
And you know, we are behind with travel in Ipswich, there's no doubt about that. Not least for the fact that you know, we've had 2 periods of complete shutdown on the project. Last year, 2 months between November 15th and January 5th, and we will get the same this year as well. So that's 4 months delay because the town, Chamber of Commerce, Borough Council, a number of other parties have been so concerned about the impact on Ipswich's retail offer of having large-scale roadworks going on major arteries coming out of the town. They have asked us to leave roadworks during this period, and we have done that. But at the moment we are somewhere between £2 or £3 million, yet still to spend on that project. We still have some major work to do after Christmas, which should have all been finished by now, so that is a major contributor. We also have local transport plan works going on, or initiatives for both Haverhill and Suffolk particularly, also Newmarket. In none of those cases have we made the progress that we wanted to make, and there's sort of widespread discussion as to how people would like to see their towns enhanced on a more sustainable basis. And we do have an issue where we take proposals to fora in those places, and we get a different result each time we present. So significant difficulty about actually finishing off some of those works, and that's something which I'm very committed to trying to resolve over these coming months. But there's money in that particular sum which is involved in that. As has also been mentioned, we are behind with some classes of capital works, particularly the so-called P3 and P4 works. These are councillor requested projects, Parish Council requested projects. We are behind with those. We have programs to try and address that, but at this stage it's making relatively little progress. So therefore, part of the money you've got there is to have that.
The question about the capital programme, the 13.8 million you mentioned in paragraph 43. As you know, we were delayed in terms of
I know that.
Yes, perhaps Councillor Phipps, this is not a scrutiny. Please allow the answer to be given by yours. Greg, the floor is yours.
In addition to the work of the transfer station, there was the associated changes to the household waste recycling centre that was adjacent to it. Because we don't know where we're going to put the transfer station, we don't know whether we want to do the changes at the household waste recycling centre at Rutland Hill, or whether we're going to leave it there and locate the transfer station somewhere else. So there are 2 components, and when we've completed the business case, we know whether we're relocating the household waste recycling centre. If we decide to leave the household waste recycling centre at Rutland Hill, we've then got other household waste recycling centre projects that we want to proceed with, but we don't want to proceed with those if we may be moving a household waste recycling centre. So the 2 are interconnected as far as strategy is concerned.
Thank you. Do you want to come in, Councillor?
Yes. A couple of other items of importance. In the resource management area, there is an underspend currently on the Riverside Road. If you look at the table 10, you will see that that will be expected to be spent by the end of the year. The balance goes down to just £500,000. And as far as the other additional funding that makes up the rest of that figure is concerned, that comes in paragraph 44 with regard to roads, the additional money we received with regard to roads, and also in paragraph 48 an additional £5.7 million Department of Energy and Climate Change funding for the Suffolk for climate change partnership.
Councillor Martin, your question, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. It's basically about the level of confusion in my mind, I would say. I mean, it's always very difficult when you've got different grants and you've got different reserves and you've got violence from this and that to this and that and so on. Looking at page 29, and I'm particularly concerned about the The £20.8 million, which was in the original budget book, on learning improvement service and other education services, which has got a reserve of 3.7, a violent of 4.8, current full year budget of 90.7, forecast at 18.7, and no variance, finally variance on the base budget, but with SOR costing £3.7 million. And I'm really struggling to work out what's going on here. My suspicion is that SOR is costing even more than you expected it to do. That some of the money that has been expended on additional redundancies through the SOR process has been via to a budget in order to disguise the fact that it's been spent on SOR. And that some of it is being identified as learning improvement service money, when in fact it's actually the costs of implementing SOR. Now, I mean, I'm not expecting a full response to all of that now, because it's a very complicated issue. But, I mean, it really does matter, I think, especially in terms of making education work in this country, that we know exactly what money is being spent on what. And so I will be putting in a fairly complicated question on that basis to you.
Councillor James.
I could just respond very quickly to that. I think it's probably worth noting that Sonia Barker does actually sit on the county strategy group, which covers schools organisation review and follows it closely. So the budget actually goes through that in terms of capital spend. We clearly discuss when there are issues around redundancy, if there are those in that. So I'll come over to Sonia first, because she will probably have more detail that you'll get from that, but very happy to have a discussion with you outside of this room.
If I may just come back on that, Chairman, I had actually discussed it with Sonia actually, and she was concerned not so much about individual aspects, but about the way in which the finances around this are confusing, and that will put in a question.
We thought you were very well versed this morning, so you obviously were very fine here. Councillor Barker there. Councillor Alton next.
Well, actually, I'm really pleased to hear that information will be available. I'm very confident that I will know that once the whole thing is done with us, they will be able to look at just how that has been managed. Because I believe that, as Martin said, there are some issues there which we really have some concern about. And also, whether or not it has been managed as well as I don't want to raise issues here, but I know that the schools have changed. I'm happy to say that we really need people, somebody should look at how the equipment is being reused or not. I think there are a lot of issues that we really should do a review on them to make sure hopefully we never have to go through again. On the paper that you have in front of you, I mean, going back to the issues of SOR in certain areas, I mean, I know particularly River Walk School, I would urge that this is dealt with and decided on the table. It's caused a huge amount of uncertainty. And also, the next paragraph 39, the education management system, I mean, continuing problems with capital. Are there best places to do if the problem still exists? Should you not be looking at that again? And just thank you to the Council on the grant for the Suffolk Climate Change Partnership. It seems to be working fairly well, because that seems to be quite a consistent amount of money that's been used. And therefore, it would be interesting to know if that's the case, how you achieve that. Because I know a lot of people said to me, they're being offered money for, such home improvements and efficiency measures from other organisations. And it is so mind-blowingly complicated that they have to try and take it up. So I think there might be some lessons that the council will teach.
Thank you. I think there's a way of statement really, I think, Councillor. Okay, are there any other questions or comments? Yes, please. That's all right. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I refer to page 56, paragraph 23. Highways and transport is forecasting a rather spectrum, savings being made. Is it sensible to be planning for savings in an area where, throughout the county, current failings are causing great concern among the public and businesses? Research has found that preventable maintenance is at least 20 times less expensive than reactive maintenance. Whilst the additional proposed office staff will offer some hope of improvements in what has been a very sorry affair, would it not be more sensible to put immediate additional funds into clearing the large backlog of work?
Councillor Newman, I think that might be a question for you.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I don't think the issue is funds being put in or otherwise into the work. It's actually the procedures of getting work delivered on a timely and indeed correct basis. And, that's the position that we're in, and that's what officers are currently working very hard to unravel some of the problems, to improve some of the inter-organisational transactions, many of which are still paper-based. We've got new initiatives coming forward which will make much more use of a digital place, and also contractors are very keen to do these things as well. So, yes, I acknowledge that we haven't got as far forward as we wanted to, or indeed should be at this place. I can absolutely assure you that all the efforts of this cabinet and most of all myself to get these things sorted out. I think people sitting alongside me here are only too well aware of the fact that we've got to try very hard to get those things done. But at the end of the day, the reason we entered into these contracts at all was first of all to give our highway service a proper capital base, and you can see how that has worked in terms of, say, the number of gritters that have been brought on stream over the last 18 months since over the last 30 months since Gears of this project. We were replacing our gritters at about 2 a year previously. Now we've got 11 new ones in 1 year. That's the sort of benefit that you get when dealing with a major organisation which has got a large significant number of major highways contracts with other authorities. And that is where we need to continue to drive efficiency through the process, to increase our use of digital platforms in order to transact information, in order to get the efficiencies that we require. And it is just no good us in this cabinet room saying that we can just go on spending more money gleefully on the highway service. We have got to find a way of spending more money with local government more effectively, more efficiently, and then we can start shaping it. Because, Mr. Chairman, the money will not be there in subsequent years, and you know the sort of savings targets we're facing for the next 3 years. We have got to implement those. I think we've got a robust plan as to how to do that. We just need to make sure it's being delivered on the front line.
Well, I'm reading it also, and I think we'll go straight to recommendations, don't you? Yeah. Okay. Is Cabinet happy to accept recommendations 1 and 2, which you'll find on page 53 of the report? Agreed? Thank you very much. Indeed. We come now to our final item this afternoon, and that is the Suffolk Guidance Park. Councillor Newman.
Thank you again, Chairman. Well, I'm sorry. So many of these papers seem to be evolved around me today, but at the end of the day, we are the local highways authority, and we worked with local planning authorities to develop county-wide technical guidance which updates and replaces the preceding Suffolk Advisory Parking standards set back in 2002, so they've lasted 12 years. This is in light of the new national policy and local research and experience. Guidance will provide policy advice and set the vital limits of parking for new developments, or that which is extended, or for which its use has changed. The intended audience of planners, members of the public, developers and architects. Local planning authorities will take this technical guidance into account in their planning decisions, and as such it will be a material document in planning considerations and indeed challenges that we may receive down the line. The key recommendations in the revised guidance expands and amends previous parking standards, introduces greater detail in terms of design and the application of the guidance. Primary differences from the previous standards are that the revised guidance provides for minimum standards for residential parking rather than maxima, due to changes in national policy and the need to reduce on-street parking congestion, often referred to by members in the Chamber at the moment. We need to introduce standards for electric vehicle charging, increased minimum parking space dimensions for residential garages, particularly residential garages under the last guidance, which actually don't accommodate the sort of cars we're now seeing on the road, let alone a bicycle or some charging gear for an electric vehicle in the future. New set of minimum dimensions for parking associated with heavy goods vehicles and vans, and a more targeted approach by allocating car parking minimums according to the number of bedrooms associated with each dwelling, rather than a blanket space per dwelling figure. Mr. Chairman, this paper comprises 5 slides of A4, but it's followed by 70 slides of responses from consultation. So I hope this does reflect a good cross-section of the consultation information that we've received, and try to be as responsive as we can.
Thank you very much indeed for that. I've got Councillor Chambers first of all.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd just like to wholeheartedly support this paper. Long overdue with this issue, and having sat on a district council planning committee myself, and the frustrations I've seen in my own division where we had a scenario where we were providing space per dwelling rather than more sensibly, as is outlined in paragraph 18, to take the approach where we look at the number of bedrooms associated to a dwelling. I absolutely endorse that this is being based now on SCC Cabinet applications on their own merits, so we're looking at urban and rural issues that roll out. I can say in my own village, new developments has caused much heartache for many community members in terms of trying to deal with the parking problems that have rolled out from a new significant development with lack of space for parking. So I very much welcome this paper coming forward. Hope that the districts and boroughs will endorse it and take this forward in new developments.
Thank you very much indeed. Any other questions, comments from Cabinet? Before I open it up for other members, Councillor Beale was first.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, I'm very pleased to do, Mr. Chairman, because at last I think it's something positive for the motorists. Quite often we're always hitting them, and particularly with those about. So this is something that will be very useful and pleasing. I think there's 2 points in particular. The guidance that's given at the moment, and it's going to be altered to a minimum standard rather than the shift towards the minimum standard rather than the maximum. Because before, if the development came forward and it's 30 places parking spaces that were loaded, and the local planning department and the members want to say 36, they used to always stand up and say, highways, they're the experts, they've said 30 is the minimum, they've offered us 30, you can't have 36. So that is certainly a very useful step in the right direction, because that will help the local planner. So hopefully that will be pushed along. And the second point is the point on garages. That's very important, because so many garages that were being built and still being built are really too small for the cars. You can perhaps get a car in the garage, but you can't get a car when you're in the garage. So a garage may be proposed to be 7 metres by 3 is ideal. It would take account of electric cars that are coming in the future. We particularly want to plug them in the garages, provided electricity down to the garages, that would be helpful as well. And also spaces for those of you who have bicycles that want to park them in the garage. So I think, I haven't got one like every year against the fence. I have a car, but I do feel that it is important that these proposed do go through this morning, and that they are supportive and sent to the local authorities, because whether we like it or not, if highways come out on something and they're saying that this is their expert opinion, it's very difficult at the local level of district councils to get any movement on that. So this is a step in the right direction.
Thank you very much indeed. Councillor Martin, anything?
Yes, thank you very much. I probably disagree with Councillor Beer about transport on almost every front. I mean, I can understand the reason for requiring a minimum car parking standard, but I do think there are an awful lot of situations in which it makes sense not to uphold that. And I do recognise the fact that you have the option for not going to the minimum where there are various reasons, including targeting consumers. I'm just a little worried that the general thrust of this guidance might induce some developers not to make an adequate difference for particular target consumers. And the point I'm getting to, I suppose, is that there is still a substantial proportion of the population in Ipswich, and I think it's probably true of others as well, who do not own vehicles. Where you have minimum parking standards for development, basically what you're doing is for those people who either do not have vehicles, you are charging them for provision being made for a vehicle, even if they haven't got one. And there are a large number of consumers who actually aren't going to have cars, and in particular, obviously, students, elderly people living in sheltered accommodation, disabled people, many of whom are not in a position ever to drive. And I think that there is a real benefit to be gained for having targeted developments for people without any parking whatsoever. We've seen some of those developments in Ipswich. I know that Councillor Nettleton raised an issue about some of those developments that take place in the various amendments. I am minded to compare two cities, one of which has zero parking and zero car use, namely Venice, and the other one, Los Angeles, where it is impossible to live without a car, and where everybody gets their own car when they reach the age of 16, because otherwise they won't be able to live without it. I personally would rather live in Venice than Los Angeles, but the interesting point is that the centre of Los Angeles is dying, and the traffic congestion in Los Angeles is appalling, whereas most of the traffic congestion in Venice is caused when people are trying to walk past each other on one of the narrow pavements. So, I mean, we do have a duty not to induce developers to put in more car parking spaces than they need to in the centre of town, but I'm just worried that that might be one of the unintended consequences of this.
I think the phone's about what Councillor
Well, there's a fine line to be drawn in my view, Mr. Chairman, as to whether we're going to allow the sort of things which many colleagues have complained to me in recent months of parking on verges, pavements and such like, because of the minimal requirements that have been exacted in previous under previous regulations. It is for local planning authorities to use this guidance to what is appropriate for their local area at the end of the day. What we tend to see on the continent in certain places anyway is a higher ownership of vehicles but rather less use. Even in Suffolk, we are seeing a situation in which vehicle sales continue to rise, so these pieces of park on your doorstep, one way or the other. But actually, alternative travel modes are growing far faster in terms of their percentage use. Now, I wish a more significant element of that growth was around cycling, because actually, I'm sure the Director of Public Health will be pleased to tell you how many other benefits, quite apart from road occupancy. But the fact is that we are woefully low. We're woefully low in places where it could work best, i.e. Ipswich and Mersea, where 4 or 5% of most journeys taking place. Compare that with what is quite common on the continent, 25% of doing that. And that's why I think we will have to continue to ask, so going back to the first paper we took today, continue to call for sustainable provision, both on and off-site with new developments, to ensure that we can foster that attitude. Because it is only by doing that and making cycling more attractive and possibly receiving dealing with some of the sort of safety concerns that people have about cycling that we will actually get that modal shift, which actually is the thing we all repeat and addresses the air quality issues which Councillor was talking about earlier on and everything else. But I think the framework that we're providing here is for local planning authorities to implement, based on the circumstances of the locality. About something like Ipswich Northern Fringe, where we want to see a good public transport offer on that development from the word go. But we don't have 2,500 houses coming up all over the place every day of the week. It's a fairly rare event. And many of the developments that we're dealing with are in terms of tens or just into the hundreds of properties. And what is provided for locally, what's provided on those developments, needs to reflect their physical location. And that's the sort of and obviously the nature of the houses that we're building. And I think that's good for the developments.
Thank you. Councillor Murray.
Thanks. I have slight reservations about what Professor Martin said about disabled people. I agree with much of what he said, but there is an example, a very good example in Mersea Homes, a popular place, whereby learning disability sufferers, very severe people that were institutionalised, now in bungalows, not even in their carers trial, all these severely learning disabilities people now own their own cars. They don't drive them, but they're taken out by their carers. Out of institutions and out of part of society. So, well, I agree. It's just that extra little. Thanks.
That's very helpful. Thank you. I think we'll move to a decision now. We have the recommendation to adopt, which will wind up page 73 on your agenda. Can I ask if Cabinet are happy to be so? We agree? Thank you very much indeed. Paper 9 has been withdrawn. There is no urgent business. The date of our next scheduled meeting is the 9th of December, 11 o'clock meeting in this chamber. So I now formally close the meeting. Thank you very much for your attendance and patience.